My name is Eleanor Grace Whitmore, but most people just call me Ellie. I live in a quiet southern town nestled between long stretches of oak trees and sleepy roads. Most nights were predictable, until he showed up. The stranger. The one who watched me every night. At first, I thought I was imagining things, until the air around me changed in a way that made me feel things I hadn't felt in years. I had always enjoyed my alone time. I liked walking around in my nightgown, sipping chamomile tea, and leaving the windows open just a little too wide. I wasn't trying to entice anyone, I thought I was alone. But someone was watching. Not in a threatening way, no. It was something else. Something electric. It was as if his gaze lingered like silk along the back of my neck, and I couldn't explain why it made my heart race. At first, I dismissed it. Maybe it was just wind playing tricks on the curtains, or shadows from passing cars. But one night, I caught the faint reflection of eyes. They shimmered just outside my window, behind the rosebushes. I should have screamed or called the police, but I didn't. Something about the moment made me freeze, and not from fear. Days went by, and every night I'd sense him again. He was always there after midnight. I began to anticipate him. I started choosing silkier robes, brushing my hair slower, letting my fingers linger on the curtain drawstrings longer than necessary. I wasn't sure what had come over me, but I felt alive. The air would thicken each night. The moment his presence returned, a part of me woke up. I'd lie on my couch, pretending not to notice, while secretly wishing he'd knock. But he never did, until one night, I finally walked up to the door. My fingers trembled as I reached for the knob. I took a deep breath and swung it open. He stood there, as though I had summoned him with nothing but my breath. Tall, lean, and silent, he didn't speak at first. His name, I would later learn, was Henry Clay Dawson. He had the kind of old-school gentleman's posture that whispered of well-written letters and long, forbidden gazes. Dressed in a fitted coat and carrying nothing but a worn-out book in one hand, he looked out of place in my modern world, and yet, he was exactly what I didn't know I needed. "I didn't mean to scare you," he said, his voice low and full of velvet. "You weren't scaring me," I said without hesitation. He looked down, almost embarrassed, then lifted his eyes slowly to meet mine. There was a heat in them, something deep and secretive, but controlled. The kind of man who doesn't touch until he knows exactly where. "May I come in?" he asked. I should have said no. But I stepped back and let the door fall open wider. That first night, nothing scandalous happened. But something changed. We didn't talk much. He sat on the edge of my couch, and I sat across from him, both of us quietly sipping on tea. I noticed how his eyes followed the curve of my neck as I tilted my head back. How he leaned forward just a touch every time I crossed my legs. The tension between us curled like warm smoke around the ceiling. And yet, neither of us moved to break it. From then on, he came by every night. Sometimes we would talk, about books, or storms, or memories of things we never told anyone else. Sometimes we'd just sit, breathing in the quiet. But every time, the heat between us grew thicker, as though the walls themselves were pulsing from the tension. I started wearing softer fabrics. My body responded to him even before my mind allowed me to admit it. Every part of me felt watched, not in a violating way, but in a way that made me feel seen. I found myself walking slower across the room, letting the strap of my robe fall a little off my shoulder, wondering what might happen if I dared to ask him what he truly wanted. One night, as rain danced against the windows, he stood behind me while I poured tea. I could feel him close, almost touching. My hands trembled slightly, but I didn't pull away. He leaned forward, and his breath tickled the back of my ear. You know, he whispered, I never watched to frighten you. I watched because I couldn't stop myself. I turned slowly, and our eyes locked. I know, I whispered back. That was the first time he touched me. He brushed a single finger along my collarbone, tracing the edge of my robe. The gesture was so soft, so deliberate, it sent a ripple through me I couldn't explain. He didn't rush. He moved as though every inch of me was a story he wanted to read slowly. I should have pulled away. But instead, I leaned in. His lips grazed mine, not a kiss, just the idea of one. His hands rested on either side of my waist, not holding, just hovering. That kind of restraint from a man who clearly wanted to devour me. It was more powerful than any touch I'd ever known. I've wanted this since the first time I saw you in the window, he admitted. I know, I said again. Night after night, things grew bolder. But never crass. Never rushed. He'd draw his fingers up my arms, trace the shape of my hip through my robe, let his lips rest along my throat while his hand pressed just gently enough on the small of my back to make me feel like I was floating. One night, I finally asked, why me? He smiled, brushing a stray hair behind my ear. Because you shine in silence. You don't know how loud your stillness is. It called to me. We made no promises. There were no declarations. Only the way his eyes spoke for him when words failed. Every night he'd leave before dawn. And every time he did, I'd stand at the window and watch him disappear into the mist. I knew there were secrets in him. He never spoke of his past, and I never asked. Some nights he came to me with a heaviness in his shoulders, and I'd wrap his hand in mine without a word. That was our rhythm, touch without terms, desire without desperation. The mystery of who he truly was only added to the intensity. I didn't want to label it. I didn't want to break the magic by giving it rules. But one night, I woke up alone on the couch, and he hadn't come. The next night too. And the next. My heart ached more than I expected. I walked to the window and stared into the darkness, hoping he would return. I left the door unlocked. I lit the same candle I always did. I even wore the robe I knew he liked, the ivory one with the lace along the sleeves. And finally, just before midnight, the doorknob turned. He stepped inside, rain dripping from his coat, eyes tired but filled with something new, something raw. I wasn't sure you'd still want me here, he said. I was never sure why you left, I replied. He stepped closer. His hands found my face this time, and he looked into me, not just at me. I thought disappearing would protect you. But I only ended up hurting myself more. I reached up and took his hand. You don't need to protect me from you. He lifted me in his arms like I weighed nothing and carried me to the room I rarely used. The one with the white sheets and the window that faced the stars. Every move he made was careful, reverent, like he dreamed of this moment and was afraid to wake up. His lips finally claimed mine with full heat, and I melted into him. Every inch of me responded, awakened. The gentle brush of his fingertips, the trail of his mouth along my collarbone, the way his voice whispered my name like a prayer, I felt seen, cherished, undone. We moved together in ways that didn't need description. Nothing vulgar, nothing loud, just the kind of connection that turns breath into music. He never rushed. Every sigh, every touch, was drawn out like a secret revealed slowly. And when we lay there after, bodies entwined and the candle still flickering on the dresser, he held me like I was a treasure he never thought he'd find. You opened the door, he murmured into my hair. I did, I whispered back. And I'd open it again. It's been months since that first night. Henry still comes every evening. Sometimes we talk. Sometimes we don't. But every night, I still feel that same tingle when the clock nears midnight. Because once, I was the woman who felt forgotten. Now, I'm the woman who was seen, even when I didn't know I wanted to be. And it all began the moment I finally opened the door.